Hey, folks, welcome to the pre-show of the program. We got about 2 minutes and we go live on the radio station over at Odyssey Radio. I'm your host, of course, Scotty Roberts. If you don't know me already, there we go. All right, just making sure we're all set up, ready to roll. Looks like it. Testing, 1, 2, testing. All right. How about you guys? You ready to roll? You ready to get this topic underway? Now, I did not put up a topic for tonight. I just announced the show. I'm getting into some weird stuff that we've talked about before, but it was prompted by Friday night's show where Steph Cuervo Queen asked the question about ghosts and having sex with them. This is called, of course, and you may recognize the name of this already, and we've already covered this on this show before. But having sex with a ghost, which is what the question was around, is spectrophilia. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. I'm not too sensitive about that, but I didn't put the topic up, so it wasn't too sensationalized. But we're going to talk about that topic a little bit tonight. Caffeine this late in the day. All right, we got about 30 seconds and we go live over on the radio station. So everybody, and I did get criticized the other day from somebody that ad hominem trying to criticize me for my political beliefs that I don't really have a radio show. Well, we do, folks, and it's also a podcast. We'll explain that more later. We're going dark. Sit tight. We'll be right back.
The Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Hey, folks. Happy Monday evening. Welcome to the program. Glad to have you on board after a weekend away. And I appreciate you being here. I'm your host, Scotty Roberts. This is my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. And that's ODYSY radio.com. And I'm just noticing in the monitor, I haven't looked at myself in a mirror, I think, half of the day. I, at one point in the day, slicked my hair back. Now it's all dried that way. So, not that radio, it's a big deal that your hair is slicked back, but my hair is all slicked back. And it's funny if I try to unslick it right now on radio. So we'll just leave it go. If you're looking and go, did you cut your hair? If you can see us over on the video, we do simulcast this show over on YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/Scotty Roberts and find my show. And you can join the chat room over there, which is inhabited by all the Intrepids, fellow Intrepids. Some are here, some aren't here, but you can go over and join in the conversation over on the YouTube channel. I see people popping in there now. Randall Flagg, Michelle Kenham Free is here. And Randall Flagg and Michelle Cannon Free and Randall Flagg. They're talking to each other right now. And there's several people there, but not everybody's showing up yet. You can be somebody over in the chat room tonight. Just come on over and join in. And you can join the conversation that goes on alongside this program. And there we go. Wow, I didn't even notice my camera and everything was all wonky tonight. I don't know what I did there. Everything's out of alignment tonight. So we'll just do it like that. There you go. All right. And for those of you who are giving direction, oh, there you go. I don't know. Oh, how's that? Oh, that looks good. If you're not watching, you don't know what the hell I'm doing. So just adjusting cameras, getting everything set up. And we're rolling. And so tonight, I want to talk about something that was brought up on our Friday night show, which has traditionally, even though we vary from this now and then, Friday night has been Ghost Day, we called it. Friday is Ghost Day on the Intrepid radio program. We tried to not limit, but shove all the paranormal stuff that we would talk about over onto Fridays. And sometimes it's there, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes we hit other topics. But the question came up this last Friday, and it was Steph Cuervo Queen, who is here right now. How are you? How's you guy? She said. How dare you, Randall? Okay, you're missing some stuff over here, folks. If you're not watching the chat room, all in good fun. It looks like over there. So everybody say hey, come on in, join the chat room. But Steph posed the question about having sex with ghosts. Is that something? Number one, can we even do it as human beings? Is there a physical ability to have sex with a ghost? And then of course, ghosts or spirits, or if you're having that kind of sexual encounter, is it a spirit? Is it a ghost? Is it an entity of some kind? There are going to be skeptics out there, of course, who look at this. And even me being a believing skeptic on some things, meaning I have had experiences with encounters with ghostly characters or spiritual entities, or at least something saying it was, but they weren't there present with me. And you've all heard recordings I've done and seen pictures I've taken and so on. I've had a lot of experiences. So I'm a believing skeptic that something is there. Not always sure if I'm dealing with a ghost of somebody who's passed on, or if there are other entities that we don't understand, interdimensional things, and so on, meaning we're not alone. Some that maybe perhaps masquerade people that were once living. Maybe they are the ghosts of people that were living, the spirits of people that were living. And so the question is out there. And I know, Steph, when you yeah, we're discussing your question tonight. She asks over in the chat room. Yes, we are. She goes, "Oh, are we discussing my question?" Yes. And I did a little bit of research this weekend, and I looked up a lot of things. And there are some things I wanted to address tonight that are much bigger than this particular topic. But as you might imagine, it is something that branched off of this topic. There were things I was finding from the National Library of Medicine, the Centers for Biotechnology Information, talking about devilish molestation, case series of incubus syndrome. And a lot of it comes from a lot of third world countries. You see a lot of this. There was something that I happened to see. Let me see if I can find it here. I've got it and I pushed it aside. I'm not going to get into this so much tonight, but I want to tell you what I found in looking for this topic. Again, from the National Library of Medicine, the National Center for Biotechnology Information. It's PubMed Central. It talks about traumatic experience and somatoform dissociation among spirit possession practitioners in the Dominican Republic. So you're talking down in the, if he were here right now, maybe he is. I'm not looking at the screen right now, but Matthew Sainsbury down in Barbados. So Dominican Republic is, I suppose, quite a distance when you're out there in the islands in the Atlantic or the Caribbean, but it's down in that region. Those islands, easy in the islands, man. You've got a lot of this kind of thing, zombifying, voodoo. All of these things come from some of those regions, or at least it were brought there to those regions. And this is one. It's an abstract that studies African contexts that have been revealed that have a strong association between spirit possession and severe trauma in human beings, with inclusion into a possession cult that serving at times as a therapeutic function. And so research on spirit possession in the Dominican Republic has not so far included quantitative studies of trauma and disassociation. But the study I looked at here was evaluating demographic variabilities, somatoform dissociative symptoms, all kinds of potentially traumatizing events in the Dominican Republic with a group of voodoo practitioners that either do or do not experience spiritual or spirit possession. And so I started looking into that, and it's a very lengthy abstract, a very lengthy piece. and it gets in pretty deep: spirit possession and local context. It talks about sex with spirits, sex with ghosts, incubus, succubus, and there's a whole study that these people put into this, uh, and a medical study, a psychological study. They've got the factors that add into it, and they've got all kinds of tables in here and all kinds of information. And I think there will be a day, maybe even yet this week, we'll look into that. We'll spin off into this for getting into a study of the human mind. But I want to dismiss something right away, and that is the notion that any kind of sexual activity or sexual talk with regarding having sex with the spirits or ghosts, that it's fake or that it's not real or that it's all imagined. I'm imagining that there's a lot of it. It is that is, but and that there's a lot of people who maybe have some emotional disorders, psychological disorders that could lead to them believing they are having sex with ghosts or spirits. There are also lots of accounts of fairly normal people who have had sex with ghosts, make that claim. Now, the big question is, how normal are you and how healthy is your mind if you're reporting having had sex with ghosts? How healthy is your life? How healthy is your psyche, your what's the word I'm looking for? Your mental health. How healthy are you if you are seeking sex with a ghost or a spirit? So here's the question, and this is something, Steph, you kind of brought this up. You're in the chat room, so I'm addressing you directly as well. You brought it up as something. Can you be in love? Can there be people who lost somebody who were so in love with them that they don't go so far as to commit suicide, to say, I want to be with my loved one in the afterlife, but they seek them out in life. They seek the ghost or the spirit. And there are some who have claimed that mechanics said, ooh, I must be early for once. Mechanics, you are. And by the way, folks, if you're not over in the chat room and you're hearing this over on the radio station, or you're listening and not checked into the chat room, come on over to the YouTube channel. You can join the chat room. If you're on Facebook and watching this through one of the Facebook channels, or over on Twitter, watching it through Twitter or X, those channels, you can come over, you can chat via the Facebook Messenger underneath the show, but you don't always see all the posts, and not everybody in the chat room can see everything you say. So if you want the best chat room, come on over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. Professor Bauer is here rather early. It's not the last 4 minutes of the show, and I think we'll give him crap for that the rest of our lives. He comes in. If you don't know Professor Bauer, folks, love Professor Bauer. Love every time he comes and contributes to this show. But many times he was coming in at the last 2 minutes of the Captain's Cabin, the post show. And I'm ready to sign out, and he comes in. You ask him a question, you're going another hour. So, but he just said over in the chat room, sexual encounters with spirits is the same as gender dysphoria, mental disorder of the highest order, says Professor Bauer. Now, lest you think for a moment that Professor Bauer must not have any inclination towards spirituality or the or the possibility of there being spiritual existence or things on the other side. That's not what he is at all. He is very much into that and into consciousness and everything that goes with it, to wrap it up very neatly. So for him to say sexual encounters with spirits is the same as gender dysphoria or mental disorder of the highest order is interesting. And we'll get his input, I'm sure, during the after show in the Captain's Cabin. And otherwise, I'd have him call in right now, but we can't broadcast the phone calls right now for some reason. One of these days, we'll get the tech figured out. That has been skewy with my program here for some reason for several months. And we can't broadcast a call during a show. Even though everything is set up to do it, for some reason, something is missing. There's a missing cog. The StreamYard cannot tell me what it is. Our radio station can't tell me what it is. Our radio execs and radio professionals can't tell me why it is it's not working. It's just not working. One of these days we'll have that figured out, and we'll take callers and we'll do live guests again. But for the meantime, when we go off the air at the radio station at the end of this hour, we'll go into the captain's cabin and we'll get some Professor Bauerisms coming in. Yeah, it's a snafu, all right, Michelle Cannon Free. Hey, Roger Rabbit, welcome. Mordecai, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Mental disorder on the part of the spirit or the person, asks Mordecai. Not really clear. There's a question for you, Professor Bauer. And let's see. When you do the voodoo that you do so well, I hope that was aimed at me, Michelle Cannon Free. And so there is the question that is before us for tonight. And in looking up, I tried to go out there and just find good, solid information, solid articles that are coming strictly from a psychological point of view. And you can go to psychological websites, mental health websites, and find stuff all the time. But they deal with this in a very different way. They don't address it head on. They kind of address it as a side thing. Well, obviously, it's almost like they're saying collectively, obviously, there is mental disorder on somebody, and that can manifest as demon possession, seeing spirits, encountering spirits, talking to them, having sex with them, faux pregnancies. Some people have claimed they've gotten pregnant by ghosts and carried through. And I just want to say right away that I think in many of those cases, they're probably having sex and they're either traumatized so badly by abuse or they're traumatized for some other reason. There's some mental issue going on that there's no memory left of them having had sexual relation. I don't know of any case that we know of, at least in 2,000 years, where somebody has had sex with a ghost and bore a child. Remember the Virgin Mary, it said the Holy Ghost came upon her. Wow, that sounds nasty and dirty right there, and I don't mean to make it that way. I'm not using entendre there. And she gave birth to a son that was to be the kinsman redeemer, the Messiah, the one of us Messiah. You get into the whole theology of God becoming man and how God came and impregnated a human woman. Did that really happen? We've talked about that on this show before. So there is a question there. When the Holy Spirit came up upon the young Virgin Mary, if this is a true story, what did that mean? What did that do? Was she impregnated by God? And without getting into that topic, because there's a whole discourse on that topic all by itself, was she impregnated by Joseph? Was she impregnated by, and because of the social mores of the day, they were not married at the time. They were not married when they went to Bethlehem and had to find a manger to lay the baby in. When she gave birth, they were betrothed for a year, which was the custom of that day. And this is why in the biblical story, it said Joseph was going to put her away privately, divorce her privately when he found out she was pregnant. Because what did Mary tell him? God impregnated me. I'm going to have the Messiah, the son. We've all been with the promised Messiah. And what did Joseph do? Did he go, glory be to God? The Messiah is coming. No, Joseph was like, okay, I'm going to go outside and have a walk. And he's thinking, I don't know who she did it with, but that ain't my child, and it ain't God's child for sure. He was not a believer in that. He didn't think they all believed the Messiah would come, but when it came down to the brass tacks of it, did he believe his wife was impregnated? And the story kind of tells you, no, he didn't, because God had to come to him in a dream and say, don't divorce your wife, because the child that's in her is of the Holy Spirit. So was that sex with a ghost? Or was it just I don't think the story implies that the Holy Spirit came down or God came down in physical form. It's like, Mary, how you doing? Hey, and let's get well, let's get a little kinky and have sex. I don't think that's the way that happened. It just says that she became pregnant because the power of God. What could the power of God, according to Scripture, not be capable of doing? So, did God impregnate her? Yeah, according to that story, yes. And did he? And there's a lot of conversation about what the meaning of young woman was and virgin and so on in those days. But at the same time, oh yeah, Sarah says right here, Jewish law would have dictated she would have been stoned to death, and he chose to save her life. So here's the question: was this a story, a cover-up with that story? And this is not the main topic of tonight. Was it a cover-up that Joseph said he took her to wife and they had other children? Not according to Roman Catholic theology, that she didn't have any other children because she was the perpetual virgin, according to Roman Catholic theology. But according to the biblical story, he had brothers, half sisters. And so did he not put her away because he actually loved her and did not want to see her harmed, but was hurt because he believed she had sex with somebody else? Was it their child and he did not want to make that announcement because they weren't married yet? They were only betrothed. The Jewish system of law. Or is the story true as we read it? We got Christmas season coming. You remember, if you're all as old as I am, and you see the perpetual reruns for the last 55 years of Peanuts Christmas, Charlie Brown, and you remember Linus breaks out, and lo, the angel of the Lord shone round about them, and the glory of God shone round about them, and the angel said, and so on, and the announcement of the child being born to the shepherds. And so either the story is true or there's some cover-ups we don't know about historically. And your faith will tell you whether or not it's true, because you're never going to prove that story. So let's leave it at that. Your faith is going to have to dictate. But the big question for tonight's major topic is, was something like that happened 2,000 years ago, was that an instance of sex with a ghost? Or did God just, we're presuming the story's true, did God just make her pregnant? Boom, you're pregnant. I'm God, I can do that. Let me take a drink. Damned aliens with turkey basters, says Mechanics. Yeah, there's that. Some people believe that Jesus was born during the summer, says Sarah. Yusuf. Sarah, I happen to believe he was born during Passover, which would be April, spring. And it's all because of certain historical logistics within the text of the story. If this actually took place, you've got, first of all, the census they talk about, and the little towns are crowded because Tiberius, they say, and there's no real aligning historical documentation for the census. They say it took place at a different time, a few years later, a few years earlier, something like that. But Tiberius sent out that all the world should be taxed, and he had a census. You had to return to your hometown for this census, and this is why Joseph and Mary went to Bethlehem. And Bethlehem was crowded. It's just a few miles outside of Jerusalem. Now, also, there's the logistical part of this story that talks about the angels appearing to the shepherds, and they ran, and that same night, they find the child lying in a manger in the cave, which was actually a very, very traditional, very custom. People would live in houses, and they'd have a house built next to a hillside. If there was a cave, or they'd hollow out a cave, and that was a stable that was connected to a house. And so when they went to the inn, which is kind of like, think of like a bed and breakfast, it's crowded. They don't have any rooms to give. They said, but we do have the manger out there. And in another place in Scripture, it talks about him being born in a cave, the manger in the cave. And so this is the stable that was connected to the house. And so you out back, we got a manger, we got a stable. You can go crash in there because she's going to have a baby. So they go back. There's not a lot of historical context to be able to line that up, little bits and pieces. But I also don't think just it's worth saying right now, and I've said it before. Everybody talks about the poverty of Mary and Joseph. They were impoverished, so impoverished they had to have a baby in a manger in a stable. And I once heard a political, it was the Reverend Jesse Jackson years ago. He's still around. I never hear from him. Did he die? We hear of Al Sharpton and all those guys that were around him. Is Jesse Jackson still alive? Just curious. But the interesting thing, in speaking, by the way, of the timeline, is that the shepherds were close enough to Bethlehem to see the baby that night. Now, the interesting thing is the shepherds only brought the flocks in that close to the cities or to the city of Bethlehem when Passover came around, because people had to stop and buy a lamb for sacrifice for Passover. And so the flocks were close enough in, these shepherds could just see the Annunciation and go visit, walk to town and go see it. They weren't out in the wilderness, up in the mountains, up in the hills with the sheep. They were close in, which traditionally that's when they would have had the flocks that close in, was Passover time. So there's a couple of other mitigating facts that would point to it having been Passover time. Timing doesn't matter, Seraph, as long as you acknowledge the event with joy. Yeah, I don't think it matters. I think that's why it's not spelled out. It doesn't really matter. It's just interesting for me as a historian. It's interesting to look into that stuff. Yeah, it was for the census that they were there. It was crowded because of the census, but the shepherds were in close because it was Passover time. And so you mix the taxation period, the census, with the Passover, you'd have a pretty crowded town. And by the way, Mary and Joseph being poor, I don't think it was so at all. Remember, Joseph, it says he's from Nazareth. He's known as a carpenter, also known, the word is synonymous in the Koine Greek with stonemason. So he was basically what you would call today a contractor. And so I think he contracted out carpentry work, contracted out stonemasonry. There is some evidence of all kinds of work being done in the little town of Sephora, which is very close, within a mile, I think, or two of Nazareth, where they think that was being built during the time that Joseph would have been a carpenter, according to the story. So perhaps he and even the young Jesus worked on this town. This is what they did for a living. So let's move all that aside. The topic is about impregnation by ghosts or sex with ghosts. So this whole thing, and we've covered this topic on this show before, spectrophilia. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a look into spectrophilia. We did a show on this a year ago or 2 years ago or something like that. So this whole idea of spectrophilia, and let me get to the strict definition of it right here. It's going to be right in here somewhere. Having sex with ghosts, bloody, spectrophilia. It's known as phasmophilia. Phas for PHAS for phantom or phantasm. It's sexual attraction to either ghosts or sexual arousal from spirits, or trying to conjure spirits for the purpose of sexual activity, through mirrors, which would be scrying into a mirror, as well as the alleged phenomenon of sexual encounters between ghosts and humans. And it's a fetish that's classified as the paraphilia, in which one is attracted to ghosts. Paraphilia is the experience of recurring or intense sexual arousal to atypical objects, situations, fantasies, behaviors, individuals, It's been defined as a sexual interest in anything other than a consenting human partner. Well, bestiality is a different thing, but there's even that. If a woman wants to, I'm saying this not as much for effect. You can make comedy out of it, but there's films all over the internet. Not that I've seen them. If a woman wanted to have sex with a horse, is the horse consenting? Maybe by not kicking her across the stable, he is. But so anyway, you get the idea. Not non-consenting or consenting. So the research that's been done on this is there's accounts of paranormal encounters with ghosts and spirits that have frequently included all kinds of sexual encounters, often described as being non-consensual or unpleasant. We hear a lot of, you watch some of the ghost shows that are out there, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, some of the other ones, all the side ones that happen on YouTube television shows and things like that aren't network television of any kind. And you see people will say, well, part of the problem in our house is I feel like I get molested. It's something touches me, something sexually touches me, and so on. They don't report that I physically have sex or was seduced by a ghost and it was a loving romantic situation. It's usually reported as some kind of huge negative thing, and a very traumatic thing, and a very frightening thing that happens to some people. There's a lot of traditional ghost stories and legends that include some element of seduction or temptation. There's stories that feature female ghosts who lure men to their deaths, and those are especially common. It's always women ghosts luring men to their deaths, but it's usually women that are fantasizing about having sex with ghosts or spirits. So it's interesting. You think of the psychological implications of all of that. There's the Latin American legend of La Llorona. There's so many L's and A's in this. La Llorona. Even done movies about it, horror movies. And La Llorona is a Mexican vengeful ghost who was said to roam near bodies of water, mourning her children, who she drowned in a jealous rage after discovering her husband was cheating on her. That's a sad, tragic tale. That's somebody who had a mental disorder. If the base story of that is true, women, would you drown your children, kill and murder your children because you found out your husband was having an affair? No, you'd probably go, hey, your shit's in the lawn, see ya, and you move out with your kids, or you kick him out and you keep your kids, whatever it is. Steph says, I'm saying, what if a spirit actually came back and fell in love and started a relationship with a person, a loving relationship? Now, that is slightly different than the stuff we're talking about here. What if a spirit comes back, as Steph says, and is still in love with the person? It would be like Steph, the movie Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze, Ghost, where he's murdered and they're going to get married, or they're living together or something like that. And he had never expressed to her that he loved her, even though she loved him, and he knew he loved her, and blah, blah, blah. This story, he's killed early in the movie. And the whole movie's about him being back as a ghost. And you remember the scene, the pottery wheel, where she's spinning clay into a vase, and the ghost comes up behind her, and it's does the Unchained medley, the Righteous Brothers. Oh, my love, my darling, I'll hunger for your touch. That song. It was made really famous again by that movie. Sarah Youssef says Jewish Midrash also discusses Lilith in that way. Now, in which way? Did somebody say something? Was she like a succubus, are you saying? Or was she... I'm trying to see what the context of what you answered there or said, Sarah, in the chat room. Professor Bauer says, all these stories are anecdotal. There's only the evidence of the person's account, nothing more. And that's the problem. That's even the problem with one of the biggest religions in the history of mankind, Christianity, is it's anecdotal. Nobody was there except the person telling the story. So Mary the Virgin, her story of impregnation by the Holy Spirit is no different than Moses saying, I saw God in a burning bush. He was the only guy there. So who said something? Yes, Scotty, that's what I'm talking about. The clay scene. Yeah. Is that real? Can that happen? I think, like Professor Bauer just said, which I was going to get to eventually, talking about the anecdotal nature of all these accounts, is that's exactly what it is. It's like most encounters that we have. Well, you could say every experience I've had is anecdotal. Now, I have a video of me getting a voice on a spirit box that I believe was Uncle Dave. And you all saw that video if you watched this show. To me, when I was there, it sounded like Uncle Dave. Rainey was filming, and she said it sounded like Uncle Dave. Now, that's anecdotal. We were there. But other people were around us. Other people saw that tape. So you're going to have your skeptics say we faked it. And that bristles me a little bit. But, what's a skeptic going to do but be skeptical? And a skeptic, oh, you faked that. I was there. I didn't fake it. So you can fake things with. Never mind. Totally different thing. Elderberry says, but are you always willing to discount their story, Professor? What if they're telling the truth, whether being psychosis or not? That's possible. That's the thing. It's like alien encounters and women who said they've been impregnated by alien entities. What is that? Is it the same thing as incubus and succubus, only given a different definition? I know there's been a lot of equating in the last, 50 years between what used to be called incubus, succubus, demonic encounters, sexual encounters with alien abduction and impregnation and stolen fetuses. Empirical data, says Professor Bauer, analyzed via the scientific method. Yeah, well, there's a lot of things we can't analyze through the scientific method, Professor, as you would know. Can you analyze consciousness? We can see the results of consciousness, but we can't say, oh, this little thing right here, this is the consciousness gene. We can't bring that into a lab and break it down, but we believe it exists because of all the factors that come out of consciousness. We can qualify consciousness by post activity, if you will, or external activity. Now, can we do the same thing with a ghost encounter, with a Nephilim encounter, with an alien encounter? Professor says, I believe that those who have had these experiences believe that they've had these experiences. Well, yeah, exactly. There are people, there's experiences I've had that people don't believe me. I've got a very good friend of mine who's a skeptic and a bit of an atheist. I say a bit of because he's got some spirituality. He still wonders and questions, but he's a practical atheist. And he questioned this whole tape I had with Dave's voice on it. He says, right. He says, and a ghost is going to wait till you have a little radio that it can talk to you on. I mean, and his skepticism was there. He wasn't criticizing me as much as he was criticizing the belief in those things. I said, dude, I was there. I was there and I experienced it. Does it relegate the veracity of the experience to false or made up or wanting to believe something? No. I'm the kind of person, I want to believe something. I want to hear something. I want to know something. I want to document something. But I'm not going to make shit up to appease my need for something. I would rather have that thing happen so I can qualify it or quantify it via my experience. Doesn't have to be for anybody else. I can play you a recording, go, look, I even caught it on tape, and you're going to get skepticism. Professor Bauer says we can define the nature and habits of consciousness, but the current scientific models cannot and do not account for the Ethereum where consciousness is. Exactly. That's kind of what I was saying in non-professorish terms, is that we can see, as you put it here, we can see the nature and habits of consciousness, but current science models cannot and do not account for the Ethereum. I agree. And I think this is what maybe happens with some of this other stuff. So let's see. Professor Bauer shot. If you added Materium in that comment, it would have been a double. Nice. Yes, the Ethereum Materium. Or Materium Ethereum. What about the Monroe Institute, says Steph Cuervo Queen. They may have evidence or proof, but working with the government, you may never see proof. So just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Yeah, right. And it's like was I talking about it on this show or no, I think it was with Sam when we drove down on Sunday, which was just yesterday. It seems like a long time ago. We drove down and had the opportunity with Uncle Dave's family to finally get into his RV where he had a lot of costuming stored and things stored and stuff like that. And we were allowed to take a few things and help them sort out some things. They're going to auction some things, keep some things. And they asked Sam and I to come down, and Rainey, because we were people who loved Dave, and so and Dave loved us, and we got a few of his things. And I might show some of those off a little later. But on the way down yesterday, Sam and I were talking about similar types of things. And I was talking about the guys who, what is it? And somebody brought it up the other night on the show, the men who talk to goats, idea, the whole thing also of astral projection and the government having been involved in their psyops with astral projection and out-of-body experience and using, I guess, do you call them astronauts? You got to be careful with that. What do you do for a living? I'm an astronaut. Astronaut. Those who astral project. And I remember, and I've told this story before, my mom had a friend that came to one of her parties once. Before I knew Rainey. It was over 20 years ago. And again, doesn't seem that long ago. But talked to him, and he had worked with the CIA or a branch of the CIA that he was part of this psyop where they were grooming people to astral project. And he's a very quiet man and soft-spoken. And he told me about some of his accounts and the things that he experienced. And he said he got out of it. Now, I don't know what the ramifications were of that. I don't know any of that. I don't know if it was, you're not allowed to talk about this. Or he's allowed to talk about it. I don't know what. He talked to me about it. And he talked about astral projection, moving to different places and so on. Now, there's going to be skeptics who say it's a bunch of bullshit. There's going to be guys who've done it that say, you can believe that if you want, but I've done it. So same with this, sex with ghosts. Professor Bauer says Dr. Dean Radin's work at IONS on the realm of magic is highly recommended for a deep dive into the spiritual realms. There you go. Might be worth looking at. So moving on, Sheldrake, you're talking Rupert Sheldrake. His work is worth a look too. So now all these accounts of these things, we stopped at La Llorona because I side-trailed there. But you got the succubus, the incubus parallels. These are all phenomena of spectrophilia. A succubus is a demon or an evil spirit who takes on a female human form to seduce men and drain them of semen or energy. And the counterpart of the succubus is the incubus, which they say is just the succubus taking on the form of the male and doing this to a female. And so the incubus is a demon that is said to take on human form. And so the incubus, like the succubus, is said to seduce women into sex with the objective of impregnating them. The mare, M-A-R-E, is another example from European folklore. It's a malicious entity, Germanic and Slavic folklore that walks on people's chests while they sleep, bringing on nightmares. So these accounts have all been linked to these documented phenomena of sleep paralysis, and in certain individuals who experience hallucinations, which often involve spectral figures or aliens. And some sleep paralysis is a big thing in the tales or accounts of alien abductions. And so the prevalence of sexual elements in these hallucinations is theorized to be due to repressed sexual frustration or anxiety. And there's a folklorist. Oh, and by the way, you can look at a book. It's called Sleep Paralysis, a guide to hypnagogic visions and visitors of the night. It's by Ryan Hurd, Hurd. That came out about 12 years ago, that book. Folklorist David Hufford estimated that approximately 15% of the population had experienced phenomena at least once in their life that is linked to some kind of mental, emotional, sexual behavior. Still, none of this answers Steph's original question. Do you think somebody can come back and have a relationship with somebody from the afterlife because they loved that person? And who would qualify that? The only way we'd know about that is if the person who's still alive would relate that tale, because that ghost isn't going to go talk to Time magazine and tell its story, as far as we know. It is interesting, though, and speaking of that, my friend Teresa St. Francis, and you can look her up on Facebook, I believe. And I had edited and designed her book for her. What happens the day after tomorrow, or something like that, or what happens tomorrow. Can't remember the name of the book now. And it was all about encounters she had as a psychic, where she would have all these spirits of teenage and young adult college age kids that would come to her night after night after night, and in a sense almost badger her into telling their stories. And where she'd wake up and now I don't think she could see them like in physical, like a crowd in your room. I'm getting chills all up and down my back talking about this one. But she could see that they were all there, and they were all wanting to tell their stories. They were all kids who had committed suicide. And what happened to these kids when they commit suicide? Where do they go? Where is there a theology behind it? And what links to theology as we know it? And so she talked to all these kids, and she had to put a restriction on it even. She said, you can't come. You got to let me sleep. You can only come at certain times of the night or certain times of the day. And they would listen. She had her spirit guides, her angels, and all this that were working with her to get all these kids together. And she wrote these stories. And some of them gave names, and she contacted their loved ones and got permission to use their names. And things like, and then she made up names where she couldn't. But interesting story by her. If you go over onto my website, scottallenroberts.com, it's in the scroll bar, which is not on on the show here. Look, it's down here in the banner. So if you go to my website, which will show up in there, you can go into book cover design or something on my site, and you can see the cover of her book. And you'll be able to go to Amazon, or just go into Amazon, look up Teresa St. Francis and her book on suicide, teenage suicide. It's actually a very, it's a very moving book. I read through it several times as I was editing her book, and it's a moving book. There were points in that book where I was like, wow. It almost brings tears to your eyes, some of this, the stories that she was given. But those spirits coming back and telling their tales. It's not the same thing, of course, as having a loved one come back and want to have sex with you or have a relationship with you. But in that same vein, these were kids that, if it's all true, which I believe Teresa St. Francis to be the genuine article and telling the truth, if it's all true, they had to come to somebody who could hear them and report their stories. And so the same would have to be true if somebody was to do that about coming back because they loved somebody. So moving on with this, despite the lack of all the scientific evidence for the phenomena of spectrophilia, it's become a frequently talked about subject. You get it in Ghost Hunters. You've seen it on Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures. The Travel Channel show had a show even called Ghostly Lovers, which I think I caught once, and I'm wasting my time watching this show. Sorry, Travel Channel. It just did not keep my attention. I thought, oh, these are wacky people, I thought. There's online forums all over the internet that all contribute to the belief in sexual encounters with ghosts, as well as the idea that they're not necessarily harmful. I've got right here, these two girls, and I say girls, young women, college age. It's entitled, "We Tried to Have Sex with Ghosts, and Here's What Happened." And it's by two girls, Katie Haney and Adriana Rebolini. And so it was on a cold January night in the year 2016. Two women attempted to seduce a ghost. And this is their story. It's spectrophilia, sexual intercourse between living humans and ghosts. Radio audience, we've only got a few minutes left. We'll continue this conversation over in the chat room. If you're not over in the chat room now, once we go off air, you can come on over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts, and join us in tonight's show and the rest of the Intrepids over in the chat room. But they had a thing on how to seduce a ghost. There's guidelines. One, they said, know that it's real. Take it seriously. Be as goofy as you want. Have tons of fun, but know that you really are inviting a real spirit from beyond in, and that you're opening a real portal into other realms. And it doesn't say here, and that's dangerous. It can be. Two, know that your belief system, who are you going to call if you get scared? God, your angels, your guides, your higher self, your cat. Doesn't matter. Do you have somebody that's there? A belief system intact if you need help. Three, don't get scared. Fear will do two negative things. One, fear will prevent it from happening altogether. And two, fear will bring in the wrong kind of energy, a darker energy that will feed on your fear. Now, this is their guidelines, not mine. I think you can have all the good intents and still get negative energy that comes in. For some reason, Mariah Carey in a Christmas costume just popped up in an ad here, holding a puppy dog. Okay. I have a theory about Mariah Carey. She just wants to be naked. So, because she gets as close as she can every time you see her doing even Christmas songs, rocking around the Christmas tree, naked. Number 4 is know that this is our realm of existence, and they have to play by our rules, the ghosts. So they have power over you only if you give it to them. That's like I say, when you're ghost investigating, never tell a ghost, you can take me and use my power, enter me and do this. I never do that. If you want to touch my hand, you're welcome to, but you can't come into me. You can't, I lay out the groundwork. Number 5, have fun with it. Is there part of their guidelines? Let go of any preconceptions of it being evil or bad. Keep it good, healthy, and fun. Well, what if it is evil and bad? That's the big question. Then there's steps. There's 9 steps here, and we got like 2 minutes. I can give you these real quick. Be in a great personal space, clean, happy, good mood. Be in your good senses. 2, prepare your space with candles, incense, mood lighting, sexy music. Sexy music for both. Do not burn sage. That'll keep the spirits away, it says. 3, define your space and set its boundaries. In other words, like bedrooms only. You can only do this in the bedroom. I don't know if I'd want to do that in my bedroom. And then my bedroom's always going to be accessible. 4, protect your space in whatever way works for you with your belief system. 5, start doing some slow dancing, sway into the... No, it's start doing some slow breathing. Begin visualizing your ghostly lover. That what it or she feels like. Ask the universe or whomever to send you a ghostly lover, they say. These are, I guess I'm giving you a step-by-step here instruction manual, huh? Ask for it to be clear and positive and good, light, loving. Remember, even like biblical text, the devil can appear as an angel of light. So you always got to be careful. 6, softly add a chant to your deep breathing. Come to me, loving spirits. Come to me. 7, believe. 8, hopefully you'll start feeling sensations. You might hear something, smell something, notice orbs of light. 9, throughout your encounter, communicate with the spirit. Make sure there's mutual respect. Nothing's done or allowed that you are not happy or comfortable or in control of. And then 10, there's a 10th, and when it's over, thank the spirit. Hey, thanks for the good time. Cash is on the nightstand. Oh, you can't take that with you, can you? So close the veil, close the door, close the portal, so on. Radio audience, we got to get out of here. Come and join us over in the chat room. The rest of you sit tight because we're going to be back after this. Live long and prosper. Shalom.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid Radio broadcast. I've been broadcasting for about 20 years now, covering such topics as science, politics, the paranormal, weird science, weird world history, archaeology, and the paranormal. Everything from ghosts to cryptids to creepy things that go bump in the night. So every week I bring you 3 new episodes. Come and join my channel and also be a patron to this site. So see the details below, and we'll see you here. Dave, I love you, brother.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, I heard.
Yep.
Did you guys hear that?
I heard that.
I miss you, Dave. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? That's for you, Elderberry. Welcome to the Captain's Cabin, everyone. And glad to have you here tonight. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight. And if you're just joining us now, you missed the bulk of the conversation, but you can call in tonight if you want to talk about this. I'm going to paste the link in the chat room, and you can call in if you're joining us just now for the first time tonight. The Captain's Cabin is the fallout after the show, the afterglow. It's where we sit back with a sweaty brow and light up a cigarette and say, that was a good one, wasn't it? And so the Captain's Cabin tonight, welcome to it. And I'm glad you made it out, everybody. I hope this was an interesting topic, and as you can tell, it can keep going on and on and on. I have enough material sometimes where I look at it and I go, I got about a paragraph of material here for tonight's show, and I got to make that last an hour. And I generally don't have much problem with that because I can read a phrase and all of a sudden it'll bring up a rabbit trail and I can go over there and there and there, and it just keeps going on and on and on and on and on. Hey, there's Fieldgood. There he is. You saw him. You saw him here first. Let me turn off the branding.
I beat everyone else. It's amazing.
Yes, you did. Look at that. Well, where's my thing here? Where's my thing? There it is. And Michelle Cannon Free, yes, some sage sticks are bigger than others. I think I can turn that off too. We don't need that going.
Mine on a good day is a 7.
That's right. On a good day, it's a 7. On normal days, the ocean was cold.
So let's see. I walked in like right at the end almost. So the topic was what I walked in close to the end. So the topic was sex and ghost, I guess.
Yeah, sex and ghosts. Steph brought it up last Friday. The show, by the way, do I have a search?
Well, I have not had a ghost give me a blowjob yet, like Dan Aykroyd and Ghostbusters, but maybe one day it will happen.
I cannot boast having had one myself. I wonder about some of that stuff because they did talk about in some of these articles that I was reading for more on the mental health stuff that people can make this stuff manifest on their own. Now, I have had situations where okay, how would you describe this? I'm not giving anything away or being dirty or naughty or anything like that. There's times where you're in that semi state of awake or asleep, the in between, and where you're awake, but you're not quite awake, and the dream state, but not quite the dream state, Sean, where you can be highly sexually aroused. That's happened to me. It's happened to Rainey. It's happened to other, and it's like, she's like, I was not sleeping. So what is that? Is that the brain? The brain has the capacity to be very powerful. So when somebody, let's say somebody lost somebody they love, could it be the ghost from the other side coming to them to make them feel that and draw them in? Or is it that person missing that person so much that they're creating it in their mind? And that mind is very powerful. Well, the spirit, not the actual body, says Steph. Oh, I can manifest Heath Ledger. Can you? You can try.
I'll bring the spirit of Marilyn Monroe back. Why not?
There
right?
you go. Yeah, Marilyn Monroe. I'd have gone out with her.
She's buried next to 4 perverts.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. Gross.
One guy on top is upside down. The other one's right side up. Hugh Hefner's on the other side, and I can't remember the other guy on the other side.
Hugh Hefner got buried next to Marilyn?
Yep.
I didn't.
He bought a plot. He bought a plot in like the 70s, right next to her.
Oh, but maybe knew that at one point and forgot conveniently.
The one that's buried on top of Marilyn Monroe said in his will he wanted to be buried upside down. So he's buried upside down, facing that way.
Whatever. It's like you're gonna not like you're gonna notice it anyway.
So she got troubled in real life, and now she's got perverts around her in the death. Hopefully they're not together.
I guess. Wow. So yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Google it. It's crazy.
Spirit? Oh, not the actual body. Okay. So is a lot of this stuff the stuff that we manifested in our minds? Is it stuff that because I know there are lots of stories out there, and some stories are heavier duty than other stories. Some people seem more sane than other people. I've also seen, people that want to talk about their ghost sex experiences. You watch them on camera, and they're like, "Oh yeah, so the ghost came to me, and I called the ghost in, and the ghost, she was crawling all over me, like, and so I was like, yeah, oh, daddy likes that. Oh, daddy likes that when you do that. Hey. You look at some weird people that do stuff like that, and you're like, nope. I don't buy this. I don't buy the story. But not everybody is that way. Some people are very well-spoken. It's like the whole alien abduction thing. Some people are very well-spoken and have very good reputations and are very credible people. So what do you do with that story? So how about anybody else? If you've got something you want to talk about, call in, guys. Hypnagogic state, said Sarah Youssef. Yep, we talked about that. I know Bud Hopkins, the late Bud Hopkins, who was a friend of Whitley Strieber's, was a big factor in Whitley Strieber discovering the things that he wrote about in his book Communion, and his alien abduction experiences. And he would talk about the Whitley Strieber went to him because he was told by psychologists he had a hypnagogic state. And Bud Hopkins hypnotized him and other things. And no, you really don't. This is something that I believe really happened to you. So what do you do with that? Let's see.
Sarah just said you can have a menage a trois with you and someone else and God. That's amazing.
The act of sex is a unification of mind, body, and spirit through a holy menage a trois between male, female, and God. Well, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
God
yeah.
needs to stop perving on my stuff.
There is that spiritual aspect to it. Yeah. Although I will tell you, I'm not usually, and I really can't think of any times, none. Okay, let's put it none, where I've entered into sexual activity and thought of God. Doesn't usually happen. It's not that it's what I'm doing is anti-theoletical. It's not anti-God. It's just not where my head is. No pun intended. So, Ryan Gale, how you doing, brother? Good to see you. Are ghosts proof of an afterlife, or are they something else? That's a good question, Ryan. What do you think? Are ghosts proof of an afterlife, or are they proof of something else, field guy?
They have to be proof of an afterlife. I mean, why else do so many people see spirits?
Right.
I mean, there has to be something. We don't know, no one can claim we know what's on the other side, obviously. I mean, you think you know, but then you don't. I mean, I don't know. I just know when you pass, there's something on the other side. And if they want to get laid on the other side, that's their business. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
well,
no, I mean,
what
that's
goes
just
on over there. Is there sex? Is there no sex? Do they still desire sex? Do they not? Obviously desire it, because there are plenty of ghost encounter stories where it's built around that. But is that human ghosts, or is it something else? Sarah says, don't you invoke the holy name at peak?
Peak what? What are we talking about?
She's talking climax.
Oh
God.
Only women do that. I don't think guys go, thank you, Jesus. I don't.
Yeah, I've never, like I say,
yeah,
I've never done that. I've never even gone, oh God. I don't think has ever come out of my mouth while I am.
Guys are just like, yes. Okay, I'm done. Let's go to sleep now.
Steph says, well, Scotty, I don't think about God going into sex, but I've surely cried out to him during it. Not intentionally to include him, however. Yeah. Yeah.
Steph, that. Come on up and elaborate on that more.
Yeah, tell us more.
We need more elaboration. That. Hop on up, Steph.
Yeah, there's I've said other things during sex, but it's not usually invoking something theologically. The bar has been set, said Sarah Yusuf. There it is. There's a lot of magic in that moment.
Get my drink.
Shell cannon free. Oh. I got to tell you, there has to be. What is tantric sex? Isn't that where you bring in all the other? I don't know that I've ever really understood the.
Isn't that crap that Sting the musician claims he can do for like 6 days or something?
Something like that. Tantra is an esoteric yogic tradition that developed on the Indian subcontinent from the middle of the first millennium onward. Boy, doesn't that make you hot and horny? In both Hinduism and Buddhism. The term Tantra in the Indian traditions also means any systematic, broadly acceptable text, theory, system, method, instrument, technique, or practice. So there you go. When an action or a thing, once complete, becomes beneficial in several matters to one person or to many people, that is known as Tantra. So could I be playing a tempered tantra?
I don't think that tantric stuff is actually possible because, I mean, they say, I go 12 hours. Guys can only go 4 hours at max because anything higher than 4 hours, your blood clots. It's like when you take Viagra and your blood clots and they say don't have an erection for longer than 4 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Your blood clots. That's why when guys get off, that they can't get off for 20 minutes. Women can get off 17 times in 2 seconds. God said, no, you're being punished. You can't do that.
I know what you're meaning. What you mean, I know, like guys. Yeah. Guys are, I understand what you're saying. Guys are usually, and women, you all know this, guys, when it happens to a guy, when you reach peak, to quote Sarah, when I reach peak, guys are usually done. They're like lions out on the Serengeti. They shag the lioness and then they go take a nap in the sun or in the shade. And but women, tend to be. Women tend to be. I'm just looking for delicate ways to say it, because I'm not trying to be for effect or anything, but I've known many women that it's one session, it's usually boom, you're done, and you can maybe do it later. Women, they can go several times, sometimes before the guy does once, and you're like, wow, are you okay? Did that work for you? It must have worked for you, because I can't do that, and so I don't know. Is that maybe that's because I'm just not good at it or something? I don't know what it is. So look at the naughty stuff we get into, Professor. Women get punished monthly. Men can have children well into their dotage. Isn't that the truth? I could be William Shatner's age and still produce children. So just think of that, Professor Bauer. We can still make kids.
And when you think about it, why is that the case? And
yeah,
from my perspective, I think you know me. I always go to the nut of the nugget.
Yeah, there it is.
If you just look at the nature and habit of the biology of procreation, until our recent scientific advancements, it required the physical act of what we call sex. And it's interesting to think about the ways in which we have cloaked and or masked through manipulation of the mind and the words that are used around this totally natural biological function. It is not anything. It doesn't have anything to do with love. Mm-hmm. We always say, you hear the term.
We can attach love to it, but it doesn't come from love.
It doesn't require love.
It doesn't require love.
And so we use terms like, well, we're making love.
Yeah.
No, you're having sex.
That's just to speak politely about it.
Right.
Because you can't always go, you don't want to go, well, my wife and I were making love. No, you go, well, you were shagging.
Yeah.
You were shagging.
And the one of the other ones that is used is, I slept with somebody.
I slept with somebody. No.
It's like,
no, I didn't sleep. We weren't sleeping.
You had sex. You may have slept afterwards, but you were having sex.
Did you sleep with her? Did you sleep with him? No. And that's the truth.
and one of the things that I know you relate to this, Scotty, because of your theological experience and background, the whole idea of having procreation as a biological function, in the way that procreation, it's dependent on this biological act, right?
Yeah.
Physical, biological, chemical act. And I used to say, well, you get a lot of suppression of sex, particularly in the Western theologies, belief systems, and religions. Down in Southeast Asia and India, the Sikhs, the Hindus, these brothers and sisters were all about getting as much of it as possible.
Yep.
But to our Western belief system adherents, I always said, well, if you're only supposed to have sex for procreation, then why did God make it feel so good? I mean, it's like this, inherent built-in challenge to control one's nature, one's drives, one's needs biologically. And you go, well, I don't know. All I know is this. First of all, we wouldn't have history without sex. We wouldn't have people without sex.
Very true.
You have this whole thing on all this abortion discussion. And I've said this before on the shows. To me, this whole abortion discussion is based on a simple fact, which is two people had recreational sex that didn't, and this is generalized, it's not in all cases, but they had recreational sex that resulted in a fetus, in a pregnancy. So that's their problem. That's not my problem. How they handle it is their problem and their issue. All of this, the worked up discourse about, well, when does it become a life? You can't just decide to get rid of a life that's been created from a man's seed and a woman's egg because you don't want it. And there's
right.
The majority of that is based on philosophy, but it's been hijacked and mangled and manipulated by the religions. So the religions have used this whole box of sex, how and where and when and why, and the intent and the desire, the control, all of that.
Sure.
But when you look at the there's a number of interesting thinkers and scientific disciplines that talk about what's known as the selfish gene, which is if men are producing hundreds of millions of sperm a week or a month, which is way more than they need for impregnation, right? And women produce one precious egg a month. So that obviously the egg is the unique, important component in this whole idea of procreation. But why do men make so much sperm?
Well, isn't it, don't they say, I remember because we weren't having children, this is before Rainey, with my ex-wife, and we went and checked on it, and they said the average male ejaculate contains about 100 million sperm.
Mm-hmm.
This is the average. You have sex for 8 minutes, and the guy produces 100 million sperm to your one egg. And so all it's got to do is fertilize one egg.
Mm-hmm. There's got to be one lucky sperm.
Yeah. It's like storming the beachhead, And I remember my doctor told me, at the time, he said, you're very low and you have low motility. And so when my wife got pregnant and we found out she was pregnant with twins, I said, well, the average male has about 100 million of those guys attacking the beachhead. I had 7. And one of them got through. They had 6, took on the suicidal mission of holding off all the body's defenses, and the one got through. So.
Well, and Elderberry just asked an interesting question, which reminds me of the way that I explain it. And I use the colloquial, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
And it's like neither one. The rooster came first.
The rooster. Yeah. But ching. Okay, this is way off my topic, says Steph. She's like, no, this is what I want to know, what I wanted to talk about. But not all the troops end up finishing the race, said Sarah. That's very true. And
well, I think Steph was focusing on the spiritual realm.
Yes, she was on the spiritual realm. She was on the can a ghostly lover come back and have sex with somebody he loves that he left behind? Well, we don't know. There's no way to really know that other than the anecdotal account of the person he came back to have sex with. Because what's he going to do? Like I say, is he going to come knocking on your door and say, I got a story to tell you? I came back and had sex with the woman I loved and left behind. That's the problem with that. Ryan said, sperm are stupid, though, so it takes a lot. Ain't that the truth?
They gotta swim, so they don't know where to swim. They go, hey, let's swim here, let's swim here. Hey, let's go up the middle. We're eventually going to hit something.
That's right. We're going to hit something.
Yeah, and so you think about it, and from just the pure nature and habit and characteristics of our biology and our urges.
Oh, here we go.
Desires, right?
There you go, Steph.
All right, Steph.
You come on. You call in.
Come on now. You got to join.
And then Sarah will call in too, and we'll make a good conversation.
We need some women on this, because right now there's a whole bunch of tea going on here.
That's right.
There's an imbalance of the testosterone.
There's an imbalance in the force right now.
We need some estrogen in here to balance this out. Because again, for me, I always go back to what is the nut of the nugget, what is actually going on.
No pun intended.
And definitely intentionally pundage. But what goes on has nothing to do with any of the constructs that we have been given to address it and experience it, the framework we've been given. And this is, again, primarily from the theologies and the different belief systems.
All right, Michelle Cannon-Free, you now made it a trio. Now you got to come on, too.
That's right.
That. So,
I think all the ladies pop on. I'll jump off. So all the ladies
don't
can
sit
come
there,
on.
Steph and Sarah and Michelle, and think I'm kidding. You guys start calling in. I'm not seeing my lines light up here. Call in. So, and I need some you women in here to talk about this.
Don't make Scotty beg, please. He does weird things when he begs.
You can be in bed. You can have the light off. You don't even have to have your camera going. Remember, how often do we see Sarah's face? We don't. See, it's going to look like that. Yeah.
Sarah, I've never seen Sarah. I don't know. I think she's a myth.
You've never seen Sarah?
She might be a robot.
Steph.
I've seen Steph before.
So
Steph is real.
I know that. To school at 7:30. So.
Well, anyway, the spirit realm, the whole idea of having some kind of ethereal physical experience, whether it's sex or if it's an astral travel, whether it's through psilocybin and mescaline and
psilocybin, that's it.
The various aspect, there's all these different ways in which we all encounter these anecdotal experiences, and they are clearly, in my opinion, real because we experience them. Now,
yes. Steph, you don't have to have your camera on if you don't want it on. If you're going to be here typing, it's easier to talk. Call in.
Yeah, that's the only reason I call in, because otherwise I'd be sitting here.
Otherwise, I got to type.
The spelling and everything.
There's the link again for anybody who needs it.
That's not pretty. But the idea of these other ethereal beings, bodies, spirits, having some kind of some type of interaction with what we call the materium. I got them both in, Sarah.
There it is, Sarah.
Double shots, everyone.
There it is, double shots.
I mean, the fact that to me, that is just a part of the consciousness of the universe, of the reality and we inhabit, and its nature and habit is the expression of both the etherium and the materium from a frequency physics perspective. It's all a bunch of frequencies, and they all just manifest and show up in the nature and habit of their signature. And we have radio waves. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're sitting here talking like this and using these words and this terminology and phrases. You got people, in the Punjab that are going, I don't know what that means, but we just get jiggy, and the same with, those out on the Serengeti plain. They don't have to explain anything. They just do it. Let's see. Steph says, but Scotty, I can fall asleep without feeling guilty when I'm only typing. Yeah. Well, come on, Steph. Stop making excuses. You can come on for a minute or two. Come on.
I think she's holding off because she has to go to a funeral in the morning. So
yeah.
I guess you'll be stuck here for an hour or so.
Well,
she's waiting until I stream. That way I can have her all to myself on my channel.
She's holding out for field guys.
Because nobody else will come on there. So, hey, why not, right?
I want to know when you're on. You got to make some announcements once in a while. So
Tuesday,
Sarah,
Thursday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, okay. For 5 hours a day, so you almost can't miss them.
It depends. It's me and Cajun Coin Hunter, so I have like a co-host, and we just talk about coins and
Cajun Corn Hunter.
Coin, COIN. He came in here once. Hunter. I told him about you once. He pops up here once in blue.
Cool. Well, tell him he should come on. He can come on and talk over here once in a while. So, Sarah,
Yep.
what do you got? Oh, okay. That was the same thing I saw Steph say. Lay something on us here. Tell us something that this pool of testosterone needs to hear.
I mean, when the discussion of sex usually comes up, most people focus on the most obvious, which is the physical side, which, you guys have been talking about. But at least, in my thinking is that it's that unification between mind, body, and spirit. So because, we have an interdimensional version of ourselves. We have a mental version of ourselves. When some explore through different types of realms like astral travel or, remote viewing. It's a different form of expression in a different form of movement. And like Professor Bauer was saying earlier, if everything is all frequencies and there's millions of cultures and on how to manipulate those frequencies. So how would everyone love to know the frequency? I mean, everybody's different, but their own frequency of what causes arousal and climax, right?
Yeah.
If you know how to access that frequency, that it would be far more common, right? I mean, as far as constantly, and what is that? Like those rats that have electrodes in the brain and they're constantly pressing the button.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're getting it's that Pavlov dog kind of thing, right? Where you get conditioned. And I think to your point, I totally agree with you, Sarah. And to your point, the ways in which we all experience either pain or pleasure is very unique and very different for each individual. It starts with just the base frequencies of who we are. How is our biology? You have this wide range and variety of different characteristics, and it's mostly visible and apparent in the field of sports. When you have a physical ability that you're really, 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 really good at something, and your biology also matches, like, for example, I couldn't get in the NBA. I'm short and white, and I can't go that fast anyway, right? I could not compete with them. So, but do I enjoy the sport? Well, I'm not that much of a basketball. I go back to the Lakers, Jerry West, and all the original cats back in the 70s is when I really enjoyed basketball. But my point is that the ability to go perform and do something is very unique to each individual. And we see all the expressions of it in most definitively in this field of sports. But there's a whole bunch of mental stuff. The whole mental thing, in fact, it's one of the colloquial cliches is that your brain, it's really your mind, is the most powerful sex organ you have.
Well, there it is.
It's true. Yeah.
It's what will determine what your physical experience.
Well, if you're not into it up here, you're not going to manifest it down there. It's not going to be the same. You got to be into it. It's got to be a mental thing, a psychological thing, an emotional thing.
Yes, and so that was the other point I was agreeing with that Sarah was talking about. It's a different state of mind. It's a different frequency set that you set for your biological and physical participation.
And then there's the quote I found of Sir Isaac Newton's today. The hardest part of developing a gravitational theory is dodging all the panties that get thrown at me by thirsty-ass science bitches. So,
direct quote, right?
That's a direct quote from
You
Sir
found
Isaac
that on
Newton.
the internet, so you know it's true.
I know it's true. It was on the internet.
Well, that's one of the other things that I find very fascinating is the whole, again, when you talk about the mind-body connection, Sarah, one of the biological and chemical aspects of our beings is this thing called pheromones, right? And pheromones are essentially they're hormones, a chemical
Egyptian thing field guy.
It's a chemical cup of our crap that emanates from us naturally as individuals from our own frequency sets. And those pheromones, I mean, they've got all kinds of, well, I don't know what they call the toiletry thing anymore. Cologne, perfume. I don't know who's wearing what.
Musk.
Yeah, all that shit. I left that stuff a long time ago. Although I was bathed in it in the 70s in Southern California.
Well,
Canoe.
you know, the olfactory nerves.
Drakkar Noir, Old Spice.
Yeah,
my wife forbade me when we started dating.
Pierre Cardin.
Drakkar. She said, "Don't you ever wear Drakkar." Because I tried it on at a store once because it reminded her of somebody she didn't want to be reminded of.
Well, I mean, to continue on that thought of pheromones, it's not just in the beginning, you know, because you have the initial attraction pheromones, you have pheromones and neurotransmitters that are released at climax, you have pair bonding pheromones, you know, depending on the type of relationship that you're in, that are encouraged and enforced, you know, chemically afterwards, or, you know, or depending on the frequency. So, I mean, in a way, everyone's a drug addict, you know?
Well,
in a way.
And that is one of the things. We are all part of the innate nature of our mind and its interaction and interface with our body. They're two different things. The mind is not the brain. The brain is the nervous system organ, just like the heart is the blood system organ. It happens that when the interface between our mind and our body through our brain, we feel it up here because that's where our brain is. So, but realizing that they are two separate things is the first important step of being able to understand them and effectively and productively navigate your journey using both of them. So the whole chemical thing is phenomenal. I mean, we barely understand it. You have to go to Eastern religion or Eastern sciences, the traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic, to really understand more of how this interface works, how it reacts, and what its possibilities and potentials are, and probabilities. That's when you start to understand the entire being of being, because that's what we are. We are humans being. We are not a human being. We are being in the active sense, in a action sense.
Well, I think I think in the Asian cultures, it's far more developed than it has in the West.
Yes,
I mean, which is a cultural thing. But I do want to take one left turn, and I'm going to direct this at you first, Scotty. Is that given that the act of sex, the act of having children, has such a positive connotation, what does that say about the meaning of our existence?
The meaning of our what? Our system?
Existence.
Oh, existence.
As humanity.
Because it's such a positive thing?
Or we're getting good chemicals out of it. I mean, it's that whole, you know, operant conditioning sort of thing.
Boy.
We play Jeopardy music.
What kind of music?
Jeopardy music.
Dun, 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 dun,
oh, Jeopardy. I'm hearing my yeah. Let's see. Would that be a chifforobe? No, I don't even know how to answer that.
Hey,
I hear that a lot.
I'll take a swing at it. And then
I could. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll throw a ball out there, and then you can swing at it. So, would you rephrase the question, Sarah? Is it about the pleasure and the nature and why it's important to our existence? Is that right?
I mean, in determining our existence through conditioning.
So how does procreation determine
our existence?
Right. So is it? Are we here because to procreate? I mean,
Oh, yes,
that's
yes.
just
multiply,
an
as they say?
evolutionary natural thing. We're here to procreate.
We're here experiencing. So this is another cliche.
We're not here to
We're-
be the best artist in the world or the best mechanic. We're here to procreate.
Well, that's that's a part of the nature of the universe. So, but then we need to back up. So we are here as I was saying, it's a cliche. But it's true. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. Okay. And the challenge with that statement is just the definition of the word. Spiritual's got a wide and deep stack of information that gets attached to it, depending on who's doing the attaching.
Mm-hmm.
But if the nature and habit of consciousness is to create, then so this goes back to my Informatica thing. If everything is information, the only information that we know of is what we consciously experience. That's the only information that we know for sure. We were talking about anecdotal things earlier in the show. The anecdotal component of this is that it is our experience. It is what we experience, and it's in this thing we call consciousness that has all these different delineations and different definitions and so forth, depending on who your demagogue is.
Okay.
But my point is that if you just look at consciousness, what are its characteristics? What is the nature and the habit of consciousness? Well, nobody can define it, at least in our scientific models, but it appears to have these characteristics. It seems like, one, it's always in motion. Consciousness is always in motion. Everything is constantly moving, and you can argue whether it's forward, backward, or whatever direction it may be going. I tend to see it as it's in constant forward motion. And that forward motion is always creating something new. So the nature and habit at a base of consciousness is that it's always in motion and it's always creating. So if we are signatures, unique frequency stamps of this consciousness, which is that spiritual having the physical experience, then because we are stamps of that consciousness, we have the same characteristics. We are always in motion. We are always creating something. As I've said before, there is no now, there's only next. The whole new age stuff and crap that I was a part of in the 90s about, you got to be in the now. Well, there is no now. Because the instant that you recognize something is now, it's in the past. You are on to the next. So that is a nature and habit of consciousness. If the nature and habit of consciousness is always in motion, moving forward, and creating things, essentially novelty or new, then we have the same characteristics because we are the reason we exist is because of that. And that works like this, so we must work the same. So to me, that's as simple as I can define.
And that wasn't even a simple definition. So,
well, there was a lot of words in there, but I tried to keep them into short sentences.
Yeah.
The idea is that our existence and our need to procreate, or the innate nature of our ability to procreate, whether we feel like we want to or not. I did not want to have children, scared to death, completely not anywhere even near where the bucket was to throw it in there as one of the items on my list.
So what is, and Steph, if you were still there, I don't know if you're still there, I'd ask you, but this is too personal a question. So I'm asking it more, it's not a hypothetical, and maybe Sarah, I'd ask this of you too, just to think about it. You don't have to answer this, but I'm saying if there's a point where, say you've reached that age where having children isn't safe anymore, but your body's still capable of doing it, but it's not safe anymore. A woman could have a lot of complications, a lot of health problems. A woman could die having sex after a certain age. And and that's different for everybody, but it's roughly the same ballpark for women. This age group right here, you stop doing that because there's a lot of riskiness to it.
Having sex and be carrying a child to term, that's two different things. because
no, I was talking about. I'm sorry, I was talking about procreating,
right,
not having sex.
right.
Well, your question, and one of the reasons that I'm going to softly apologize for that long-winded answer, your question was extremely deep, because you were asking, what is it? How does that affect, or is that the reason for our existence? Well, if our existence is from this consciousness that's always in motion, always creating, and we're a part of that, then our nature is the same. So our existence in that regard, to me, is based on the characteristics of where we come from.
And by the way, you were also talking, and Sarah, you can speak to this too. You were talking about the things that we do emotionally. We get wrapped up in it. It's our emotions start driving things. Or was it Sarah? Did you say that there are emotional things that we do? We put all these other trappings on the natural act of procreating, but then that affects so much too, because you've got lots of couples out there where one member of the couple wants it all the time. The other member of the couple could live without it after a certain point. And so there's conflict that can arise from that.
That's dependent on the nature of the connection between the couple.
That's the nature of the connection between this. So that's the emotional aspect. So is it, but why does it naturally happen that way? Is it because it's not supposed to happen? It's unnatural for
it's like Professor
procreating
Bauer says,
after a certain
motion.
age.
Yeah, I mean, people grow apart, they grow at different rates, but which, I agree with Professor Bauer that it all comes down to motion. It does come down to motion. The son overcomes the father, that's or the parents are supposed to die first. Those are considered natural, or I guess natural or cultural operations. If if a child dies first, it's considered really, really unnatural if they die before their parents do. But and it is that central thing of motion. We talk about genetic memory. We talk about energetic things going through family lines. Energetically. I mean, things grow, evolve, and change, but. And I think, at least in this way, it's going up against time. Time is time the enemy.
Time is the flame in which we burn.
Right.
Yes.
It was from Generations going into the Nexus. Rodham McDowell played a superb part.
Yes.
But
Malcolm McDowell.
So Malcolm McDowell. Was it Malcolm? Yeah. So the idea that there is memory in nature, because Sarah, you mentioned genetic memory, right?
Yeah.
So the idea, what is that? How would you define a genetic memory? Some characteristic that in its energetic form, in its set of frequency set, it moved forward with a new set. So it was a characteristic carried forward, right? Is that a decent definition?
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that for now.
All right. So you mentioned I mentioned Sheldrake, and you said you prefer Raiden over Sheldrake. So you're familiar with the morphogenic resonance, right?
Yeah.
And the morphic fields.
Yeah.
That's who we used to use, Rupert Sheldrake, because we got a pseudonym for the male unit. So the Rupert. Okay, go ahead.
Oh man, how many of those are there?
Yes.
So the idea of morphogenesis, which is memory in nature, is what his whole the book he's a biologist, but he also has delved deep into consciousness, into the mind, into the sciences. One of his best books and banned TED Talk is on Science Set Free, where he takes the 10 fundamental dogmas of science and takes them And as opposed to looking at them as laws, he looks at them and as questions. And he goes through and he finds that with very convincing evidence that each one of them are not laws, they are assumptions at best, and not based on all the available information at worst. So if indeed there is this constant motion of creation that is the nature and habit of consciousness, it's always creating something new. I quipped on a show the other night that somebody was talking about, the older I get, the bigger I get, and stuff slows down, but I keep expanding. It's like, well, if consciousness is in
no entropy there,
is always in motion and creating something new, then I use that as a reason why we get bigger as we get older.
Yeah, I take issue with the term "something new" because in just saying just consciousness, you can consider it on a global level, the global conscious, global unconscious, which in some areas, equate that to like the Akashic records, or having the ability to draw data to yourself for you to work with. In some claim to do through psychic sense, the ability to gain data without doing actually physical work out of it.
Non-local consciousness, like
right.
Remote viewing,
right. But now I lost my train of thought. See
see what happens.
So to me, that all of that memory, the morphogenesis, the non-local consciousness, the Akashic records, because they come from consciousness, which creates everything. And the way it does that is through energy and energy frequency fields. They create a stamp of information. So that's why they're there to go get, number one. That's why they're there to inherit, number two, because they're all individual frequency sets and stamps and signatures of a set of information. So the guys that do remote viewing, and if you haven't followed or know about future forecasting, go check them out, futureforecasting.com. These guys are doing amazing work, double-blind scientific conditions, using protocols.
I listened to some of their stuff.
It's mind-numbing. And you think, well, how in the hell can they go somewhere in their mind to a blind target and pick up whatever is supposed to be there and gather data, information, characteristics, smells, sights, sounds, temperatures, landscape, all these different things that they can then go back and verify a target hit, that they were in contact with the target. Well, that information that they go and see, and this is what Ingo Swann, one of the he was essentially the guy who came up with what is today's remote viewing, right? He was a huge psychic. He did all kinds of things. Highly recommend his book called Penetration, pun intended.
Yes.
But that's the name of the book, and it's about, he was asked by government intelligence agencies to go remote view the moon. And he found bases, he found all kinds of, I think there was 6 different entities that he encountered there.
Now, was that his imagination, or did he actually see them? How do we know he actually saw those?
Well, I
mean,
think
could these entities be in interdimensional space?
That could be it. But even in the dimensions in my model, those are just different frequency sets. When we think of frequencies, you have to think about it in all manner, shape, and form that you can imagine. So astral travel, bilocation, remote viewing, psychic, clairvoyant, clairaudient, all these different skills are characteristics of consciousness, which is why there's such a long history of anecdotal experience and a lot of very empirical evidence of this ability to go get information.
Well, it was Field Guy disappeared.
So the information is out there, and it's a matter of dialing into it. It's essentially Sheldrake, says that our brain is kind of like a transceiver, right? So
we have to filter it or become resonant with those frequencies.
You find out what that frequency is, and you dial in, and you resonate with that data set, which is a set of frequencies that have happened, and they are always there. So the nature and habit of those signatures has all their own uniqueness about them, which is what makes us who we are. We are the individual, unique signature and frequency stamps of consciousness. When we look at how consciousness seems to unfold, we all have a shared consciousness experience. There's a band that we all seem to play in, otherwise we wouldn't be doing what we're doing now. And then there's all these different frequencies around, above, below, in between that we are not aware of because we are not paying attention to them. But since we have developed all these toys and tools and techniques to go out and gather telemetry on any particular data set that we want to go look at, that's why we have radios. That's why we have television. That's why we have cell phones, because those frequencies are there and we've figured out how to harness them.
Right.
So that, in fact, when you think about, well, like Sarah, you took issue with always something new, right? So that is consciousness is always in motion and always creating. Well, the act of creation is something that is new. And if you think about it, thinking is the act of creation. Thought is a creative act.
Well, the old "I think, therefore I am."
I think.
I think. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in terms of, just to give a different example, in terms of, the example of giving resonance, Scotty.
Yes.
For someone who has had a paranormal experience, and then as time goes on, they continue to grow in those paranormal experience, that for me, that would be a sign of resonance. Like if they say, oh, when I was a kid, I saw a shadow person, and then you start seeing shadow people everywhere, or, different type of phenomena. So, I mean, as far as being aligned and resonant with what we consider the unseen world, which ties back to this whole interdimensional thing. So
this isn't the exact same thing, but it made me think of this guy I was talking to at my mother's get together several years ago, and had worked for a branch of the CIA, astral travel. And he said there was one place where he went. I don't remember where it was. It was supposed to be a secret place they were trying to get these guys to go and look into. And he was in like a dark file room, and the only light was coming from a frosted window on a door of a locked door. And he's in this dark room, and it's like a library with the file cabinets and all the file boxes. And then the door comes flying open. He sees a shadow of a man. Door comes flying open, and there's a security guard. And in the shadows there. And then the security guard shines his flashlight right on him and says something to him like, "Hey, you there." And he said it spooked him so bad, he backed off and he got out. He whatever they call that, withdrawing from the astral travel. But he said, he asked the question, he says, can I be seen on the other end? Are these some of the manifestations of shadow figures, or the manifestations? Are they extra dimensional people? Are they people astral traveling? Are they things like that we see when we see ghosts and things like that?
And then sometimes it can even be psychological, putting barriers or, protective mechanisms within the self. So, it's the whole thing with Jung, the exploration and reconciling of the shadow self.
There it is. I like Jung. I'd like to explore that one a little bit more, but guess what? It's 11 o'clock and I got to get out of here. But, and Professor Bauer, what you just said, astral travel is a natural characteristic of consciousness. Therefore, it's there to be had, chosen. We need to explore that some more. I want to explore the astral travel thing a bit. Maybe we'll talk about that on Wednesday.
I want to astral travel to the beach.
Me too.
A warm climate.
Well, yeah. As much as I would enjoy the whole idea or the ability to astral travel in my mind, I'd rather bilocate.
Yeah.
I want to take the whole experience with me.
Yes.
And just transport to the beach, to an island, to the club. I don't do the clubs anymore, but the whole idea of being able to do that bilocation thing, which is another aspect of time travel.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I'll bilocate.
Yeah, I like the
doppelganger effect.
Yeah, there's another one.
There's places I'd go. I can tell you what.
Yeah, I will settle for the chemicals and without the effort. So
yes.
That's
yeah. I'll take the chemicals with no effort, please. So, well, guys, thank you for being part of this. And Skyfalls, who just got here, and anybody else who came late, we're just wrapping up. And so, Sarah, thank you for being here. Let's do this again on Wednesday.
Yeah, I need to get some girls in here.
We do.
Yeah, you do. I mean, because I got to
round up a few girlfriends.
As much as I enjoy looking at, as much as I enjoy looking at and listening to Scotty, it would sure be nice to have some estrogen, some feminine energy in here.
Yes.
Yeah.
What, you saying I don't got no estrogen?
Man, I think you're just not in touch with your personal side. You know, that feminine thing. You're disconnected.
My feminine side. This is my feminine side.
Divine feminine energy, as the girls were saying.
That's it.
Right.
It's my divine feminine coming out. I struggle with that notion, by the way. We can talk about that too. So I actually think what looks like femininity in men, divine feminine, I think true masculinity is tenderness is part of it, and gentleness. And so you don't have to argue with me now. We'll argue it another time. But go ahead, Sarah. What you were going to say?
No, I said it's all part of it. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. It's that whole procreative aspect. Because I mean, even if you look biblically, you know, from
God had his female aspects.
Hey,
yeah, I mean, one of the aspects that the devil was jealous of. I mean, devil wanted to be like God. He didn't have that procreative aspect.
So, Sarah, I've got a question for you. When you gather the gals and you guys jump on, what is this whole phenomenon with women liking bad boys?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
I want to know because, you know, you on one hand, we talk about, you know, I think of, you know, the images that we got in the 40s and 50s and the classic movies about the masculinity of men and, you know, the Clark Gable type, and they were men, but they were gentlemen.
Yeah.
And they had a certain
walk around with assless chaps and
they had a certain je ne quoi about them that was respectful yet but strong and stoic in a lot of ways. Yeah. And so that's kind of, you know, the motif that I grew up with. But now, I mean, the last 20 years, this whole bad boy thing, I'm generally interested about what is going on there. Why do women get attracted to it? And they've got all these psychological behavior.
I am probably the worst person to ask, but
why? Because you got a bad boy boyfriend?
No.
No, she said that flatly. She didn't even go with the joke. She didn't go like, yeah.
Susie Q says, because in the Viking days, you better go with the badass or you're dead.
That's right. That's right, Susie Q.
But I mean, you know, like it's the same thing with men. You know, it's boredom and stupidity.
Well, yeah. Why do men go with the woman with big boobs and long legs? You know, it's cliche to say that.
Well, no, on the physical aspect, you know, that's, you know, the whole genetic component, right? You're looking for women with wide hips who are able to bear your children.
Yeah. That's
let me
guys don't want to necessarily always, they want that, but they don't want to produce the children.
Yeah. Let me put a pin on that balloon there, Sarah. There's a funny meme that goes around. It's like, it shows these modern millennial women and the amount of stuff that they're doing to themselves now, the cake and the makeup stuff and all of the dressing up and everything. And there's one woman said, well, all you guys want is women that, they're not who they are. They're unrealistic. So you've put this whole thing on us women. And it's got guy who played Thor,
Chris Hemsworth.
Chris Hemsworth sitting there next to him goes, "You got it all wrong, sweetheart. We'll do it with anything that walks."
Yeah.
and that I think is not appreciated, but that's why, again, I think
it's the development of artifice. That goes back to even the Book of Enoch, but it's the development of, people have unhealthy views on what is considered beautiful and healthy. You look at women now, they make those duck faces. I'm like, what is that about?
Oh my God.
It's dumb.
I see those and I just want to get out some toilet paper and wipe it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't look like a pair of lips to me. It looks like.
And on wiping duck faces note, we're out of here. So Sarah, you have a good night. Thanks for being here.
All right.
Let's do more of this. Appreciate everything
Thanks,
you
Sarah.
brought to the table tonight. And Professor, good to see you, brother. We'll see you again on Wednesday.
If you want to carry on down this nefarious path of noodling. Oh yeah,
and maybe we'll pick it up a little bit. There might be a Robertson tomorrow. So we'll see what happens.
That would be great.
We were supposed to talk today, and something happened. It just didn't happen. We were supposed to. We talked in type. We were supposed to talk about planning the show tomorrow, and it didn't happen. So we'll see where we are tomorrow morning.
All right, my friend. Well, thanks again for letting me in.
All right. Thanks for coming. See you later.
Take care.
So to speak. All right, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Did I yawn? And I didn't notice it? So everybody, thanks for being here tonight. I got to get out of here. It's that time. It's now 11:08 Central Standard Time. Time to get out of here. So thank you for coming. We'll see you next time. And live long and prosper. Shalom.